All right, what's going on, everyone? It's Matt Zapp. Today, we're here to talk about Parlour Tricks, the best-selling book from Morgan & West that is finally back in stock after selling out completely earlier this year. And to do that, we welcome in our favorite magicians, time travelers, and of course, all around spiffing chaps, Morgan & West.
I'll take favorite magicians. I'll take that.
Yeah,
we'll ignore the second
so
half.
It just says our favorite magicians. Full stop. Done.
Okay. Done. Well, you know, you really are our favorites. It's so good to see you guys. We haven't seen you probably since Share Magic Live. We haven't had a chance to speak. So what do you guys do?
Various bits and bobs. We've been doing a few videos, been trying to write some new stuff, and largely just trying to stay safe and not worry, because that's easier than everything else.
I get that. Moved from these seats. We've just been sat about.
I mean, I've moved from, because Share Magic Live, I was in the office, I was in the kitchen, so I've moved. But it's been a very slow translational process.
Okay, all right, that works for me. You've made that move. Okay, so we won't take up too much time with that. We'll move right on because we want to talk about how, since this book came out, I remember at Magi Fest we had it on the table. It was pretty much gone in the first day, and since then, you know, it came out, it sold out. People have been asking us when it's going to come back, and it's a book I read it cover to cover, basically on the plane back. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. But from each of you, since it's kind of a unique book, I would love to hear, you know, we'll start with you, Mr. Morgan. We'll start, and I'd love to hear how you would describe this book in 1 to 2 sentences.
It's the book of the show in the kind of the traditional sort of movie terms, of the sense, as it were, in that we had this show Parlour Tricks that we toured for a number of years, and decided we wanted to write a magic book that was about the show itself, not just in terms of the tricks, but also in terms of how the show is put together, why we make the decisions that we make for various things on stage, even down to why the set looks the way it does, and the sounds and everything like that. So it is quite literally the book of the show. That's exactly what it is for me, anyway.
And anything to add, Mr. West?
No, I mean, I think we think of Parlour Tricks as basically a making of documentary special feature, but a book. That's it.
Yeah. So you've got to read it rather than just sort of hitting go on the DVD features. Yeah,
and I agree, because it's more about just the particular show. And I think the best parts for me is, like, I love learning tricks, obviously, but I'm a big theory guy, and there's a lot of people maybe not realize a lot of thought-provoking essays in here. And the biggest takeaway I took from it is kind of understanding how something is done versus why it's done. I know you talk about that very early on in the book, and you don't have to go into the full description from the book, but if you want to just kind of elaborate on that how versus why for people who haven't read the book.
Well, the thing is that, as always is the way, like, everyone knows enough tricks. You just, none of us need to learn any more tricks.
I mean, and to learn a few more, because I don't think, if anything, over the last 6 months, I've forgotten everything that I knew before.
Okay, so Morgan could learn a few more tricks, but most of us know enough tricks. And the thing is, what is often, I think, missing from the literature, as it were, when we talk about especially stage and parlour and stand-up kind of magic, is that sense of, okay, you've got 5 tricks, 6 tricks, 8 tricks, whatever, and most of the books just say, put them together into some sort of routine. Go. And what we want to do is talk about the process of doing that, and the process of structuring a show and writing a show, and those differences between tricks, and all the decisions you make in putting together a show that aren't just individual to the tricks themselves, but relate to how the tricks relate to each other, and all that kind of stuff that you need to talk about the whole show in order to talk about.
And I think as well, you kind of touched on quite an interesting point, that sort of, it's not just the how, but the why. And the why is the really important question. Whenever we work quite a lot with Peter Clifford as he directs our stuff these days. And that invariably is just a session of us in a room talking to him, and he says very little other than why. I'm just constantly asking us the question why over and over again. And I think that's a very, very important question to ask yourself in any aspect of putting together any sort of theatrical performance or any sort of show, be that in a sort of a traditional sort of theatre setting or in the close-up where you're going up to people, why you're doing what you're doing. And we hope that the book will make you question that and make you think about that, because it lays out all of our thoughts on why we're doing what we're doing. That's what it does.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and that why and versus how is something I've really thought about, because there's also the essay in there about removing cards from card tricks, and that's one I thought about a lot. But going back to sort of that why, since reading this book, I've thought about that a lot. I use some technology-based tricks, and there's a lot of people who are using these technology-based tricks to do card tricks, and I'm kind of wondering why people are still just so focused on doing the card tricks. So when I read that essay, I thought to myself an important piece about developing more creative magic and taking those cards out of card tricks, and wanted to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Yeah, well, I think I mean, Mark Herstein has talked a bit about this with his tech magic sort of rules and stuff, and he has a lovely bit where he talks about that if you're using technology and magic as an example of not using cards or whatever, the technology should feel like it is the only thing that makes sense to use. Like it should be, when you're saying, I want you to think of a card, so here I have them all on my phone, that doesn't make sense because the person could just think of a card. So when working with tech, it's about making things where the technology makes sense. And that's the same with any magic trick. So like if you're doing a routine where you want someone to think of a drink, say, it's weird to have cards with drinks written on them that are otherwise cards. It's like, well, isn't this just a card trick where you've just saying the names of drinks instead of the names of cards? Shouldn't you like have drinks, or maybe at least have a menu, like a cocktail bar?
Yeah, like a cocktail bar would have a menu, so that kind of makes sense to have a prop like that. But as you say, it doesn't really make sense to have just big bits of cards with names of drinks written on. And I think it's the struggle that we have as magicians is when we get into things in the beginning, the first things, most of the time, I think it's fair to say we learn our card tricks, or maybe sort of a caps and balls variant, or little packet, but usually packety tricks kind of things. And card tricks, I think, scratch a lot of itches in terms of there's a puzzle to be solved for the performer to solve. There's lots and lots of different ways to approach things. You can do really cool things with cards. You can include cardistry as well for sort of like a juggling aspect for it all. And so then it's almost second, and you have to plow so much time into learning how to do really smooth sleights that then I think it can feel for some people sort of almost without knowing it, a waste to not have that transference of skill to other types of props. But card tricks are great, but they're not the be all and end all. And I think that, especially for when you're performing for an audience that isn't as into magic as a magician would be. I think that's the thing. Performing for magicians, card tricks are great because magicians love card tricks. Performing for a sort of I hesitate to say the word real audience, but sort of a generic audience, there's lots of variety out there. So it's like a cinema only showing action movies. You know, after a while, your audience is going to get a bit bored of that and kind of go, can't we have a rom-com? And you go, no rom-com. You know, that's which I'd be fine with, but you know.
I think also as magicians, we get caught up in the idea of like, well, this trick is an assembly trick, and this trick is a card deposit thing, and this is a whereas one of the things we try and do a lot in the show is think about what the actual point of a trick is, be it a linking rings routine or a multiplying bottles routine or anything like that, of going, like, what are we actually achieving in this trick? And so much of card magic can be boiled down to someone finds a card, someone chooses a card and you find it, or you do a card goes from one place to another, you know, and a few other things. But I think that when we're writing our magic, a lot of the ideas is going, well, is there a central magical idea, the fusing of two things, the teleporting of an object, the thing, and you go, well, if that's the central idea of it, do I have to use a prop that I've used already in the show?
Can you take a card trick that you know, describe what happens in the card trick, and then cross out the word card every time, and then look at that again and go, oh, so what actually happens? Like if you take a triumph, a disordered deck of cards becomes ordered. Can you replace that with something disordered becomes ordered? And then, you know, all of a sudden you've got far more possibilities open to you, and you can start playing with ideas around there.
Or like an ace assembly trick, which is, you know, you have a bunch of things that are alike or somehow linked to each other, and you separate them, and they reform themselves into a group of things. You could do that with anything. You could get, I don't know, think with some flour and some yeast and some salt and some whatever, and all the stuff for bread and in a bowl, spread them out amongst 4 bowls, and then get all the ingredients for, I don't know, baklava or whatever, you know, and spread them out amongst bowls, and then you turn the bowls over, and now suddenly this one's got a loaf of bread in it, and that one's got. That's kind of an ace assembly trick. I mean, it's not, but, you know, it's the same theming. And it's our thing when it comes to writing and developing material is going, well, I want the magic trick. When we go, oh, that's a good idea for a trick. The idea for the trick isn't 4 aces go from 4 piles to 1 pile. The idea is these things that were separated come together. and we write new material by going, let's look at old tricks and old ideas and go, that idea of separation coming together or order coming chaos or two things being separate or broken apart and then fused together again or whatever. That is enough of a kernel of an idea.
How can we apply that to stuff that we find interesting?
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. That's awesome. I mean, that's even better example. I was going to say, because in the book too, it's even more literal. I believe it's with the ring on ribbon trick. How you got the idea from a card being on a string or a ribbon, if I recall correctly.
There's a trick in Tarbell, and it's also reproduced in the Gen magazine, I think. And it was that case of, but why is it a card? It doesn't have to be a card. It can be anything else. And you could argue, well, why is it a ring? And the answer is because we decided it was a ring.
Yeah. And that was one of those tricks where we looked at it and went, not only why is it a card, because it could be something else, but a card really doesn't make sense on a string.
No.
We say in the book, why would you, if you give someone a card, no one's first instinct is to try and pierce that card onto something. Whereas if you give someone a ring, they put it on.
Conversely, like a card sword kind of makes sense because stabbing a sword through like a papery item is something that you could do. You could stab something with that. That has more sense to it than putting a string through it. It's sometimes it can just be about texture. Sometimes it can just be about the feel of something, whether it works or not.
And that's part of it as well. Actually, that what we said there about texture and feel is that when you're writing a show as a whole, and the reason we put the show as a whole in order, and like even in the book, we include bits where we're setting up something for later. So we just go, this bit is us setting up something for later. That's all. Bye, and then we carry on. It's like we could leave those bits out because then there's no trick there, there's no method there. But the point is, it's about when we talk later about how we've been building up to this trick for a while. Well, we want to show that we've been building up for a while, and because it's about having those sort of peaks and troughs and that textural flow in your show, sometimes it's just a feeling of going, we've kind of got two tricks that are a thing, a card is signed over here and vanishes or is destroyed or whatever and appears somewhere else or in a box or a thing. And one of the great ways of, if you love both of those tricks but don't think they're a bit similar in your show, go, okay, for one of them, let's not use a card. Let's borrow an object. Let's borrow a thing that creates some other unique thing. And then you can do basically the same plot twice. But now you have that trick where a signed card appears in your shoe and that trick where a ring disappears and appears in a ring box. And the audience will remember them as different tricks rather than card to thing.
If they remember them at all. Audiences remember the first trick and the last trick and anything that really stands out. Otherwise, they've no idea.
That's true. But it's great, too, because, you technically aren't not doing your card tricks. You're just doing them differently, which is, it's perfect because, it's obvious when you read the book that you guys are always improving your show. You talk about I hear you talk about the show now. You're constantly moving it forward. And I actually learned before we even got on this call that you have actually created. So I don't know if people know, but when you get the book, you get access to the whole show, which is super cool. It's super unique. And one of the coolest things is going in the book and you can see, you can read along with the script and you guys are right on the script, which is awesome. And
hopefully
you went back and you made a commentary track, which I know is getting put on right now. It's going to be available probably right when this comes out. Can you just tell us a little more, what's on that commentary track?
So one of the things that we didn't bother putting in the book was lots of sort of silly little anecdotes and also sort of incidental details about various things or why we do certain things or things that have happened and the way the show's evolved. And we thought it would be cool just to sort of do one of those DVD commentaries where we literally watched the show and we just chatted. We sort of chatted at the audience, as it were, about interesting points. It's not just us kind of going, on this was filmed on a Tuesday. It's not that.
I think, and the thing is, because we try to put as much detail as we can in the book, but there are things where, when it's being edited, the editor goes, you don't need to say that.
Yeah, you don't need that. And where Andy looks at it and goes, no.
Sounds like Andy.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely points where, there's a bit we talk about in the commentary where we're talking about the two pictures that are on the back of the set that we mention early in the show and we use later. But
we've got loads of versions of those pictures.
Tons of versions, loads of development that wasn't worth going into detail about in the book because In the book, we talked at length about what the trick was when it was finished.
Two of those versions are somewhere in these shelves behind me. I was working out, can I grab them? I don't think I can. I think they're so deep in the shelves that I don't know really where they are.
You could send us a picture later.
Yeah,
we will. But it's exactly the kind of thing of in the commentary on the video. The idea is obviously you watch the show first. Don't watch it with the commentary on. We'll talk over the whole thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense.
That once you watch the show once or twice, you can watch it back. And partly we're talking about the writing stuff, but often we're just pointing out things that we missed in the book. We didn't have time to, like even like little set details or little costume details where we go, oh, that is because of this, and we wear this because of that. The stuff that it just wasn't quite space in the book to put, but are part of the million little details that make up any show.
Yeah, and those are very important to see, and that's great that you guys are doing that. I'm looking forward to hearing that. I haven't had a chance to hear that myself. I know it's going to be available very soon. That wraps up our discussion of parlor tricks. But if you have a few minutes, you guys, I'm very impressed. Infinite time. I love it. I am very impressed. When I saw you at Magi Fest, you guys never really seem to step on each other's toes. You seem to know each other very well. So there's a game going around. I believe it started on TikTok where we're going to ask you a few questions. And it's super simple. Basically, the question is, it's going to be a straightforward question. And if it pertains to you the most, I want you to point to yourself. And if you think it describes the other person the most, I want you to point to them. So for example, if I said, who reads the most books? You don't think too much about it. Just either point to yourself or point. Perfect. So that's an easy one. So you guys get the game. We're going to try to keep it a little fast paced, and then we'll wrap up.
I did have to work out which way I had to point.
Yeah, so. I think that's you. Good.
Yeah, that's me. Yep, yeah, and that's you. Yeah, there we go. We got
Jeff, and this is me, but I'm not playing. So we're going to start real easy. Some of these, the whole team actually helped put these together, so everyone kind of knows you a little bit differently. So there's a lot here. There's about 10 questions, and we'll start right away with who makes the best Lego models? Oh, wow. Okay.
You're more because I just do off the instructions, and you're more creative. You've actually you built stuff online, and yeah. So I made a Death Star recently, but I very much had the instructions. So
that's So who is the best at board games? Okay, that one was easy. There was very little hesitation on that one. What is the board game of choice?
Currently playing Through the Ages, a modern history of civilization. Me and some friends have been playing that asynchronously on apps since lockdown began. Probably averaging about 12 games a week of that at the moment, maybe more. Okay. So yeah.
All right, here's where we're gonna get to this. These might be interesting. Who takes longer to get dressed for a show? Okay, wow, that was the quickest answer so far.
But, a lot more to sort out.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is actually kind of goes with that though. Who uses the most mustache wax?
I don't use any. Okay. This is all it'll do. This is dreadful.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. But who's the most organized? Yeah, really interesting.
Oh, massively.
Okay.
I literally do all of the admin.
That's fair. That's fair. Okay.
Matt, I posed this question. Who have you been dealing with on email?
Yeah. I would have to say it was you.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. That's good. All right. So here are some less ones about the show. Who gets the most hangry when they haven't eaten for a while? Interesting. A little hesitation there. So it's okay. It's definitely Mr. West. All right. So if you're on a long car ride, you're going to the next show. Who is absolutely the one who's going to have to stop to pee? Nobody. Just got
nobody. We will if we're running late.
We regularly turn over who's driving. So
yeah.
Okay. Fair. All right. We'll just call that a draw. Draw. But if it's a long car ride, who's controlling the music?
Driver. Driver. Yeah, driver.
Okay. All right. So we got two draws. We got two more questions. Actually, three more questions. Who is better at improvising their way out of trouble in a show?
Oh.
Wow, the humbleness from the Lego models totally shifted there. So, you know what? We'll call it a draw again, since you guys are both great. And here's a good one. You can take a minute to think about this one if you want. Who would beat Joshua J in a wrestling match? Got to answer. This is a must answer. Okay, fair. We will let him know. We will set that up. We'll schedule it for late September. Give you a chance to
That's fine.
Hurt him though. Be like punching Kermit the Frog.
That's the problem, isn't it? Yeah,
it really would. Okay, and here's the last one. Who is the boss? Yeah. I think if you handle the admin, you kind of have to be the boss, huh?
No, I think it's there's definitely 50-50 share of what's going on with this.
All right. Well, that was great. I appreciate you guys playing along and actually, giving it some thought. We appreciate the insights on Parlour Tricks. It's available now. It was not available for a little bit. It's available now, but we know about Parlour Tricks. What is next for Morgan and West?
Well, who knows? Because we are going to theatres. We were touring a show called Unbelievable Science, which is our science show. We're trying to sort of adapt that so we can go into schools. We're writing a show with Peter Clifford at the moment, actually. But that's all very much. If you go on our Instagram, you can see tiny little bits of hints of what that might be. And other than that, there's a couple of little ideas for other books that we've got, but we still haven't quite got our heads around what the tone of them is going to be. That's the problem. We're still still poking them, and generally melting, because in the UK right now it's upsettingly hot and no one has air conditioning. That doesn't exist over here, so everyone's dying. So yeah,
that stinks. I have mine running real nice right now, so I'm nice and cool. So I'm sorry to hear that, but hey, hopefully
it doesn't exist here.
Stay cool, and we will catch up again soon. It was great seeing you both. Thanks for taking a little bit of time. And look forward to everything you have planned.
Cheers.